Our next and final presentation today is Jóhann Þorvaldur Bergþórsson from Plain Vanilla. Jóhann, he graduated in mathematics in the middle of the financial crisis here in Iceland and decided to try the computer games rather than work in the financial sector. Probably a wise choice. In collaboration with former colleagues at Landsbanki, he founded the game company Dexoris in 2009 and was among the first in Iceland to release video games for smartphones. Very interesting. Jóhann joined Plain Vanilla Games in March 2012 and went with Þorsteinn Friðriksson and Árni Jónsson to San Francisco to raise capital for QuizUp, despite initially having little faith in the concept of QuizUp. So, please welcome Jóhann.
Hi everyone, glad to see you all here. This is a slightly different venue than I imagined, and you have to forgive me for I'm a little bit sick. I've been battling the flu for the whole of the week, so if I faint, I hope that the front row can grab me. My name is Jóhann. I'm the CTO of QuizUp, and I'm going to tell you a story of technical debt and how we kind of learned from our mistakes while doing QuizUp 1.0 and try to do a better QuizUp 2.0. So basically, I'm going to talk about failures and mistakes of Plain Vanilla for 25 minutes, which is kind of a different PR than you're used to, not the Plain Vanilla party clan. All right, we like to start our presentations by iterating on our mission, which is connecting people through shared interests. And this is kind of key in what I'm going to talk about because Plain Vanilla started out as the idea of filling the slot of, like, no one has done a mobile trivia game well. They had done Draw Something, they had done Scramble Friends, but no one had done Trivial Pursuit for mobile. And while doing that, we learned a lot of things. And one of the things was that the trivia game is kind of a gateway drug into a social network. And we kind of are constantly pivoting towards that direction. I'm going to start out by just briefly telling a little bit about QuizUp. Like most of you probably have heard about it, I hope. That it's the biggest trivia game in the world. It had a really successful launch on iOS, had million users in a week. To date, we have more than 30 million registered users, and we have around 500,000 questions in around 1,000 topics in 6 languages. So this is basically just to give you a sense of the scope we're operating at. And we have over 1 million games played. So as a trivia game, we managed to make QuizUp a really successful trivia game. But I don't really want to talk about that. I want to talk about like what we kind of did wrong in the long term when we made QuizUp 1.0 and how that like decisions that we made during 1.0 and trying to get it out of the door kind of affected us in the long run and slowed us down immensely. And to better understand why we made those decisions, I'm going to go briefly over the evolution of QuizUp, just from where it started from. And like I said, it started from the basic idea of like, we wanted to make a great multiplayer trivia game for mobile. And me, Þorsteinn Friðriksson, our CEO, and Árni Jónsson, our current product owner, we ventured to San Francisco with this basic idea and started prototyping the idea and fleshing out, figuring out like, how are we going to do it? How are we going to get it to users? What makes us different from every other trivia game that's out there? And we started out by like trying to focus on simple concepts. So we're like, okay, we're doing a trivia game. It's a game first and foremost. We need to have a set of categories. We need to have a topic. And we wanted to make it different from other trivia games. So we wanted to have it really niche. So we didn't want to have a sports category. We wanted to have something super niche. And close to heart, we decided to do Eurovision QuizUp. And it was a really rough prototype, which we shipped to the App Store, incredibly buggy. I remember hotfixing the servers day after launch because people weren't getting awarded points, like all kinds of clusterfuck. But we are doing things really quickly because we wanted to make something and present something to VCs and show like this is what we want to build. And as a prototype, it was successful. Like it validated a couple of ideas, we learned from it, and going forward, we decided to tackle bigger topics, and we managed to land a partnership deal with Lionsgate Entertainment on doing an officially licensed Twilight QuizUp game, which was basically the same game as Eurovision QuizUp, but it was like more polished and had a much more successful launch. And I'm going over this to iterate, like, at this point, QuizUp was a game. Like, we had, like, tinges of, we saw that we could partner up with big brands to get, cross-promotional traffic. But we were mainly focused on, like, bringing the best multiplayer experience on mobile. Then we launched a couple of more of these satellite apps. We did Batman, we did Math, and all kinds of, like, they're all focused on around single topic. And while we were doing it, and especially after we launched Twilight QuizUp, we kind of realized that, like, we were seeing huge engagement numbers, and, like, people really, really loved playing a game about their favorite topic. And then we kind of started to pivot the idea, like, okay, there's more to it than the trivia game. We need to, like, we can use the game as an icebreaker to help people connect with each other, like find people with similar interests and help them, form communities around those interests. So in May 2013, we went through these ideas in our head, and we figured out, okay, we kind of know what we want to build. We want to build an iteration on Twilight QuizUp that has many topics, all of them super niche, and we will want to have some social media functionality built in with it. And that was, like, the original thought for QuizUp 1.0. And at that time, we kind of had to make a decision, like, how are we going to build this? Like, we had, for a year now, built various games that were battle-tested, running in the App Store. We had infrastructure to support them, but those were games. What we wanted to build was the first iteration of a social network. So we kind of, and we also wanted to, we had QuizUp running on iOS and Android, and we wanted to kind of consolidate our work and kind of bring the team together. So we kind of looked into what can we do it in a cross-platform way. Actually, I'm kind of sad that we didn't delve more into Xamarin, because I think that could have made sense. But we decided not to do it. There was no magic bullet to it. We didn't have experience with it. It was a high-risk thing, and we wanted to get QuizUp out there because, like, it's a highly competitive market. The idea is not super unique. We had to be first. So we decided at that time that, fuck it, we are going to go ahead, we're going to build upon the technology that we have, and we're going to race ahead, and we're going to launch this thing this year and kind of build upon the technology we had. Because the team we had huge experience in the current code base. It had huge experience in working with the game engine. It had not great experience working with native UI kit, for example, at the time. So we decided to just full steam ahead. We're going to build QuizUp 1.0 in a game engine. And we managed to pull through. Like, we were in the flow. The team was super excited what we were going to build. And we shipped in November and had a really successful launch. Yes. Like, this, like, Captain Hindsight makes it like we should have done things differently at that time, but I think we probably made the right decision. But building a social network in a game engine is intensely crazy. And the game engine we chose was Cocos2D. And, like, Cocos2D at that time that we were building the QuizUp prototypes was not well maintained. Like, it's a project that is super nice for indie developers to make small 2D games. We had experience in it. We were pretty good at it. It was super easy to do great animations. But, like, when we were getting close to shipping QuizUp, we realized that the smallest part of QuizUp was actually the game engine, the game part. Like, and the rest of the stuff was just navigating through scenes, showing lists, scroll animations, navigation stacks. And we just rolled up our sleeves and we just built all of that. And it worked, but it's something I would never do again because, like, we weren't building on our own foundation. Like, we were responsible for all of our bugs, and we couldn't just. We spent so much time focusing on building stuff that was not core of QuizUp, but just something that was a legacy decision. So Cocos2D was the biggest technical debt of QuizUp 1.0 on iOS. And we just saw it shortly after launch that, like, this is something that we have to get rid of. Then there was another, like, I'm going to briefly touch on the other ones, but the main focus is the Cocos2D thing. It's like we made that decision to, like, architect the client in such a way that we had a global consistent cache of all the topic metadata, like the hierarchy of topics, and we just would refer to those. And that was, like, when we had few topics, like 100 and 200, that was not a big deal, and it was quick to sync. And then the topics grew. We added 6 languages to them. And like the complexity around that became really unwieldy. We had a lot of race condition bugs where if you would get a challenge in a topic that you hadn't synced to your client, and like all kinds of just architectural decisions that we hadn't thought out through. And because we had already launched, were hard to kind of retroactively fix. So at one point we decided we just have to kind of stop, like you have to sync all the topics before you can do anything in QuizUp. And that was like the worst decision we've ever made in QuizUp. And like for a while it's really slowed down the startup time of the app and kind of killed the user experience. But the worst thing, and like what kind of killed QuizUp 1.0 as a tech software project, and this is like a classical story, and like people with more experience than us will just laugh at this, is that we just didn't figure out how we do nice client-side unit tests. Like Cocos2D was not a framework that kind of encouraged you to do this. There are no tests almost in Cocos2D. And we didn't have the kind of discipline and experience to kind of figure it out at that time. So we shipped QuizUp 1.0 with almost no unit tests on a client. And this is a really weird decision because like Plain Vanilla has a testing culture. And like the API server, which I was responsible for both projects. We wrote thousands of tests for the API server, but we just couldn't figure out what a nice pattern to write the tests on the client. And this was like, this is a classical story. Like after we launched, we just saw how a lack of tests slowed us immensely down. And because like shipping to the App Store is really scary. Like there's no rollback. You just kind of have to know that what you're shipping there is good, and you have to know that you're not breaking stuff. And we couldn't know that, so we kind of just created this huge Excel document that had like just test steps, like what we needed to test before we shipped to the App Store. And because we didn't have any automated test for that, we kind of the iOS team just sat down for 2 days and just manually, like a robot, went through each and every one of those. And it gave us hugely low confidence. Like when I press the release button to this date in the App Store, I get chills. So, like I get super stressed. And eventually, like the regression test list was too big, and it didn't make sense for us to do it in-house. So we started buying like external testers to do it, and that's just expensive. Like we're just seeing like the lack of test is just costing us money. And then like, okay, we're programmers, like I feel like a robot when I'm doing this, I can just make the computer do it. So we invested a lot of time in trying to get a stable like UI integration test suite where like the computer would do these steps. But after like 2.5 months on and off trying to get that to run stable and actually have confidence in that, we just gave that up because like that's nice to add on top of like a stable unit test suite, but to tack it on afterwards is like there's so much global state in it, you can't get it to run reliably. There came up, like we developed and we iterated on QuizUp 1.0 in this environment, and we kind of like, we learned a lot. Okay, like when you ship things, you learn. And we shipped to all the locales, we shipped to an iPad and an Android, and we eventually started treating QuizUp 1.0 as a prototype. Like this is a prototype of the social network that we want to build. So almost like in May this year, we kind of figured out, okay, now we have fleshed out in our mind like what we want to do, what's the next iteration going to look like. And then we sat down again, like a year later from the first decision, and figured out, okay, how are we going to build the new thing? And we would be a pretty sucky company if we would do all the same mistakes again. So we kind of sat down and tried to learn from our mistakes, learn from the technical debt that we had created for ourselves, and kind of figure out which of this technical debt can we get rid of and which are we just kind of stuck with. So the first thing and the most important thing, and the subtitle for this whole lecture, is that we decided we must write unit tests for the code. We cannot ship QuizUp iOS to the App Store again without having unit tests. And we just needed to figure out how can we do it. And at the same time, we decided like we are changing QuizUp 2.0 in so dramatic ways that it doesn't make sense to keep on using the game engine. So we're going to scrap the UI layer, and we just have to rewrite everything there. And that these two together made us think differently about how we structure the code. And we kind of set up like we wanted to look at the coverage numbers to just have a clean measure of like, are we forgetting to test something? And we wanted to tackle problems by using a test-driven development methodology, not super strict, but like where it makes sense, you apply it. Often we explore the problem domain, we do some prototypes, and then we kind of clear it up, harden it, and tighten the screws by using TDD. And then we had like a strict social agreement in the team that you would never merge a pull request if it didn't have tests for the code. And we are using tests as like a QA where you can just verify. Like if this pull request says what it's gonna do and there's no test to verify it, how can I trust the one who writes it that it actually does the thing it does? So that's our first step in QAing, just reading all the tests to verify that this does what it does. Then we also like Plain Vanilla grew as a company, so we had like huge influence from just all the brilliant people that are working on all the different stuff that we're doing. And for example, like most of all, I've been really influenced, and the whole mobile team has been influenced by what Facebook is doing. Like Facebook is doing an awesome, incredible job with mobile and just web. And we've been hugely influenced by React, how they tackle the problem of UI, how they tackle the problem of data flow. And we've been trying to go as far as we can by just mimicking these patterns, but using Flux in the context of mobile, using immutable data structures, and just structuring our code in such a way that we can kind of deterministically see, like, this is the UI, this is the code, and unit test the hell out of everything. Then eventually, like after we ship, we'll probably add some UI integration tests on top, just to make sure that some fundamental things keep on working in an integration test suite. We also changed how we worked as a team. Like Agile means a lot of things for a lot of people, but for us it means that we wanted to get much, much better at learning from our mistakes. We embraced the culture of retrospectives, where we kind of really aggressively retrospect everything we do and bring out actionables on something we want to improve on. We also just made sure that we used all the automation that we built in and had internal daily builds, so like the company is always dogfooding the latest version of QuizUp 2.0. We set ourselves to that we would focus on stability before new features, so when building 2.0 we let each feature kind of settle in before we start working on the new feature, just so that the build is in a mostly shippable state. We've experimented with length of sprints, like week, 2 weeks, and made it super easy to get the whole company involved by shake and report bugs and just get immense feedback while we're building. And also there's visibility into the build. Like this goes along with stability. Just put it on the wall. Like we had these metrics all in place, but now we want to see them, we want to look at them, and we want to use them to help us measure, are we actually better at building this thing now than we were a year ago? Because if you're not, then we're going to fail. Yeah, so this, like I said a couple of times during this lecture, this is a classical failure scenario, like where there's this big debate, like should we have spent a little more time developing 1.0 so that we could have not made some of these decisions, or is it inevitable? Like, couldn't we have made it differently? Like, and I mean, many great software companies have run into this situation where they are pivoting so hard and changing the direction that they have to kind of do a big rewrite. And we are doing a big rewrite. We are changing both the design and the code base of QuizUp dramatically. And this could end us, honestly. But there are a lot of pros to it too. Like, it's a lot of fun. Like, you don't have to like dig deeper into the mess that you made. You kind of have to, and because we've set such a strong contract in actually learning from our mistakes, that we actually had a pre-mortem before we started this project, where we sat and like imagined, like, how will this fail? What will we do if we do this wrong? Then we will fail. And we've just over and over again just looked at this and like, are we doing these things? And if we are, we have to change and stop that right now. And it made this possible for build upon lessons learned. So like, for example, QuizUp iOS now has approximately 3,000 unit tests, which run in 4 seconds. And it made us get rid of most of the technical debt. QuizUp 2.0 doesn't sync the topic metadata. It's not built in a game engine, so we don't have that external third dependency like Apple is a hard enough third dependency. So like bringing in another one is a huge risk factor. And one of the reasons why we didn't go with a cross-platform solution, like there was no way of knowing if that would have just slowed us down or not. And like we are super excited about what we're building. Like I think we are bringing QuizUp in the right direction, and being in a much stronger team, building on stronger foundations, and like using stronger technology makes it a really exciting time in the company. But still super scary because this is a big rewrite, and we have seen that fail many, many times. It feels a little bit weird to have like talked about, like QuizUp 1.0. I think many people here have played it, and I've been talking about the QuizUp 2.0 as the greater and the better, and like it's so much better in every way. Just look at the code, look at everything. So it feels kind of anticlimactic if I wouldn't end this lecture by actually showing it. So I can't. Sadly, like we are this close to shipping, but we are not close enough to actually show screenshots from it. But if you meet me downstairs at the QuizUp booth, I can probably show you some. Because this is being recorded, I can't show you. It goes online. So yeah, this is a story of like an honest story about technical debt and like how a inexperienced team kind of made decisions and then had to live with them and had to learn from them and go on and make something new. So I have nothing more to tell about that, but do you have any questions? Sorry.
This rewrite, how is it going to improve the user experience?
Yeah, so how does this rewrite affect the end user? First of all, like the redesign of QuizUp, which you haven't seen and I can't show you yet, that we believe benefits the end user immensely because it kind of removes the words of what's not flowing correctly with QuizUp now, makes the whole user experience much better. And like getting rid of the old technology makes the startup time much better. Like instead of the startup time to QuizUp now is like 2 to 20 seconds if you're in a super slow mobile network somewhere outside of Iceland. And the startup time in QuizUp 2.0 now is like under a second. And just the overall smoothness and the speed. Like we changed our we put speed on the focus. Like we want things to be fast in QuizUp 2.0. So like the overall the design changes we made are going to be much better, and the architectural changes are going to make the app more fluid, feel more native, and we should be able to do it more fastly and iterate more quickly on going forward. We are not as, like, for example, when Apple released this iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus, we had already started thinking about QuizUp 2.0, and we made a conscious decision. QuizUp 1.0 is not going to support those screens because the work on just configuring the game engine to do that would have not paid off, especially when we were going to change everything. So with using fully native, we will be able to react to those things much quicker because they will just come out of the box with what Apple does. No, we're not. But I was thinking, because the lecture before was about Xamarin, and I just remembered that was one of the technologies we looked at when we started doing 1.0 as a cross-platform solution. And at that time, I didn't have the gut feeling that it would be like stable or robust enough. But actually, when I looked at it a couple of days ago, I think it's something that, like, if you don't have it has merits. I think it's like the type safety of it, and like I did not for this, no. That's mainly because we didn't want to have the third-party dependency. We don't want it to be fully based on the vendors.
Did you switch to Swift, or are you rewriting
We are. That's a really good question. Are we rewriting in Swift or not? And we decided to not go with Swift. Even though, like, I love where Swift is heading. I love the type safety of it. It removes a huge set of problems which Objective-C has. And like the problems that I really hate with Objective-C is that it has a compiler, but the compiler doesn't help you at all. But we felt that Swift was not it was too much of a risk. Like, and people have shipped big apps with it, but they have been really slowed down by the development tools. The compile times are slow, and I feel like that would have kind of killed the momentum for us building this. So I think we will introduce Swift later on as modules. Android, yeah, I kind of left out of the story because this was mostly about QuizUp iOS. But when we decided to do QuizUp 1.0, we had already done Android in a game engine as well. But that game engine was really bad, and like we were not happy with how that was performing. So at that time, we decided to scrap the game engine and do QuizUp 1.0 in native Android. So, and that kind of resulted in that it took longer, and we didn't ship Android until March 2014, which is okay. But that means that we are not rewriting as much on Android. But we are still, because what's kind of fueling this rewrite is also the redesign. The redesign, QuizUp is going to be a completely different app. And that kind of makes it hard to reuse some of the technology. So there's some rewrite there too.
If you had like a new idea tomorrow and you decided to just do something completely new, how much of the 2.0 approach would you take with the new prototype to start tomorrow?
You mean on attack?
Yeah, like when you did 1.0 was very much prototype, you didn't do much unit testing, and now you're going with a more solid structure. If you were to do something brand new tomorrow and you didn't know how viable it was, how much of your approach would you apply to the thing tomorrow?
I think I would do it exactly like we're doing now, but I would probably try to do it in Swift. Or I would probably try to do it in React Native when that comes out. But the methodology, like how we're tackling it as a team, how we're building it, what's like the social agreement and the rigorousness, that's working really nice for us. But the two technologies, like I would be interested in trying that with Swift, and I would be interested in trying the React Native. But that kind of sets the project has to have a certain risk barrier, which we don't have now. We can't take any risk. We just have to do this the right way. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have one question. First of all, thanks for the honesty. I really appreciate it. My question is sort of how we got into the timeline of this review and sort of initial estimate is that. How was that gone?
Yeah, that's something that we are also learning. Like we naively wanted to ship this in November, but I think it's a combination of many factors. It's like estimating software is super hard. Estimating software that we haven't really figured out what we want to build. Like we're changing the scope. We're kind of iterating on the fly. It's hard, but we are past the point of like we are going to ship, and we see the end in sight. But we have seen delays, and that's scary. I saw a question there, I think. Yeah. Yeah, dashboard. Okay. Our data team has built a hugely nice dashboard, which we kind of we are using Mixpanel as our main data source. Mixpanel and Amplitude. We're sending events from the clients there, and our data team has built dashboards which take and aggregate those and render them in a really nice way, so we can see the monthly active users, we can see the crashes and all in an internal dashboard. What we are also trying out with QuizUp 2.0 is that we are sending UTP packets to a Datadog collector. So we're using statsd to measure some latency and measure count events. And it's more of an experiment because Datadog, which we use for all of our server infrastructure to measure latency, measure just everything you can measure. They also have out of the box really nice dashboards that's a little less handmade. We're just experimenting with, does this make sense? And at least during the beta, it's been useful to see, measure the startup time, measure how many memory warnings we're getting. And maybe we'll ship with it, maybe we'll turn it off before we ship. We'll have to see. Thank you very much.